to start by showing you the web portal. I'd like to really start by thanking all of you for being here in attendance today and for your work on the cost study. We literally could not do this without your hard work and effort, and we really appreciate what you contribute and want to make sure that you get the most out of your work. So that's kind of the purpose of today's webinar. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And you should see a view of the web portal from our administrative side, which has a number of rectangular listings of each participant over the last several years. You see different colors which indicate whether your work is in progress. If you've submitted your work and you're waiting for us to respond, you'll see that's coded in pink. And if it's been approved and all of the data has been validated, you'll see that's coded in green. So maybe this is a good time to ask if everybody's able to see this screen, and if there's any problems, you may either let me know verbally or email us, I think would be another way to do it, or use your chat option. So I'm going to assume that everybody's able to see the screen. Is that basically right?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So the next thing I'd like to do is to actually go to our University of Example. You'll see that that's an aspirational pier that we have constructed. Not exactly, but there's some good things about the University of Example and some problematic things about the University of Example. But in any case, it's a good way to illustrate some of the features of the data entry and validation options in the portal. So you'll see that when you go into the homepage of the University of Example, the programs that are listed are shown as individual rectangles. And the first thing we're going to do is just go in and look at what it would look like to edit one of those programs. So we're going to go into the science program. And this is for the year 2017. So you'll see that there are entries for the average number of degrees and all majors, which includes double majors and triple majors. In this case, they had the same number of first majors as they did all majors. You'll see the instructional faculty FTE listed, and you'll note that they have some significant number of faculty that are doing either sponsored research or service in the semester. You'll see the credit hours that were taught by those faculty. So the mapping is the teaching done at the undergraduate lower division, upper division, and any individualized instruction, as well as the graduate level instruction and individualized grad instruction that would often be either research or dissertation hours. See the corresponding course sections that go with each of the credit area, hour counts. And then we get down to the academic and fiscal year totals. So we see a total of 5,409 undergraduate student credit hours, 832 of which were taught in an online format. You see the same information for graduate students. And then you'll see the salaries, benefits, and then other than personnel expenditures that were expended by this science program. They also had a significant amount of separately budgeted research and public service. And what we'd like to do at this point, now that the data is in the portal, we want to take a look at what this would look like in terms of a comparison with a 3-year average So by clicking this radio button and review for submission, we're going to go to what we refer to sometimes as the second page, which shows the 4 cost study tables and how this particular program would stack up. Now, these tables by themselves are useful, and we could spend some time exploring them, but today I really want to show you that in order to make the most of your data entry and validation work, you may want to compare your metrics with a 3-year average. And you have choices that correspond to the Carnegie classification. For instance, if this is a doctoral university with the highest research classification, an R1. So if we show the 3-year averages, we would be able to see how this program compares. But you have a second option to decide, do we want to look at programs that are from all institutional types, or specifically those that are from either the private sector or the public sector. So for this demonstration, let's just pick public, and then click the radio button, show 3-year averages. So when it turns to hide 3-year averages, you know that you've actually selected to show the averages. That's the toggle on and off. Now, they don't show up in tables 1 and 2. We've worked on that a little bit, but we've deferred having that displayed until we get some additional feedback on the utility of table 3 and 4. Table 3 contains the focus on the productivity metrics. So we will see here that these 24 tenured faculty in this department taught an average of 240 student credit hours for undergraduates. And this compares favorably with a 3-year average for the other publicly controlled R1s in this particular academic discipline of about 166. You'll see that the metric for other regular faculty, the non-tenured permanent faculty, is quite high, nearly 750 credit hours per person. This department taught 416, which is significantly lower. And then the same applies for supplemental faculty, an average of 250 versus about 516. Now, it would appear that there's one area where they're higher than the 3-year average and a couple areas here where they're lower. But if you look at the overall combined total, they're actually quite close to the 3-year average for all categories together. And that reflects the relative number of faculty that are in each of these categories. We only have 4/10 of an FTE supplemental faculty. So in spite of the fact that their 3-year average of 250 is half the 3-year average, it has a much less weight in the combined total. We can also do this for graduate level instruction, and we get a similar comparison. They're actually higher than the 3-year average, so for both undergrad and for graduate instruction. And if we then go over and look at the number of class sections that were taught by faculty type, we can see that they were also somewhat higher than the 2.8 at about 2.9. So it gives you a quick way of saying, okay, this department looks like, although there's some variation from the individual level metrics, as a department, they're quite close to the 3-year averages. And that would give you some degree of confidence that the data is in a ballpark that you would expect it to be in. For table 4, we have the cost metrics. So we get a summary of how many faculty were in the department, how many of those total faculty were instructional faculty, the percent of the faculty that were tenured faculty, approximately how many students they taught in the fall semester, based on the idea that a full time load, if it was just focused in this discipline, would be 30 credit hours. I'm sorry, for semester, 15 credit hours for an undergraduate and 9 credit hours for a graduate student. The cost of $342 per student credit hour compares favorably with the average of 57. And we can see that if we look at the research expenditure per tenured faculty of about $315,000 per person, that's more than twice the, well, it's about twice the average for the 3-year average for this type of research high institution. You can see that the sample size is over the 3-year period, but it's aggregated for CIP 40, which is a 2-digit level CIP. If we go back up to the top and we want to see a different comparison, we might be able to get a better one with using the highest degree offered. Now, this is going to be a doctorate, since we know that the program offered doctoral degrees. And let's just switch it to all to see a difference in the display. So we'll click again, 3-year average, go down, and we see, okay, if we use that particular combination, we don't have a benchmark available. So let's try percent undergraduate. And one more time. This time we've got in the category where most of the degrees offered were baccalaureate degrees, that is, the percent of undergraduate degrees is in the category from 75 to 100%. We can see that the cost per student credit hour in this subset is smaller than the 342. So it gives us some context when we compare this particular CIP 40.01, which I think is listed as physical science. Now, actually, in reality, we don't have a lot of our participants that just report this CIP. Most of the time, science degrees, chemistry, biology, physics, et cetera, would be, even material sciences would be differentiated more than this 40.01. So this gives you an overall idea of the options available with the 3-year averages. And then we can go to the next program and do another kind of look-see. Here we're in economics. And again, this is a program that offered some doctoral degrees as a second major. So we'll take a look at how the 3-year averages might look in that case by, again, clicking Review for Submission. Let's see if we can get the highest degree, showing the 3-year averages. And yes, again, we see that the economics program was slightly more expensive. We had a larger sample size this time. So you've got some options depending on your situation. As you noted, there is an option to just select private. So let's take a look at privates. And we'll again see what we've got. So the private 3-year average is higher than the public, which is not surprising, although it's not a high percentage higher. But this is just a way of illustrating how you can get this information, and you can share this with department chairs. We'll talk a little bit about the view-only mode in a few minutes, but it gives you a way of looking at the data immediately to see if it's in the range that you would find acceptable. If it was 3 or 4 times more expensive per credit hour, you might say, I wonder if there's some anomaly in the data, or was there some situation in the department that was out of the ordinary, so that it might warrant further investigation. And this can often be accomplished by using the view only option and selecting to send this to the department chair or possibly the dean of the school or college in which the program resides. So that is kind of a good look at the view only option. Now, what we're going to do is to take a look at some other things that you can do within the web portal to examine your data once you've completed data submission. So I've kind of gone back to the home. So I want to go back to my University of Examples homepage. And this time I'm going to look at reports. And you'll see, and hopefully I'm going to try to see if I can scroll, make a little bigger picture of this. Hopefully that's better. You see this option to compare direct expenditures by program. Now, once you've submitted your data, you'll have this option available to you. In the near future, we're going to actually move that ability a little further up so that you could look at it without having completed the data submission. But we sort of think the best practice is to get all of your data submitted, and then we'll take a look at it and see if we have any problems and begin kind of a dialogue about areas which we have concerns about. And once that's completed, we approve your data for submission to the study. Now, it could well be that subsequent to submitting your data to the study that you find that there's a need to change something. That happens to some degree every year with our participants. And so you could then contact us and ask us to unlock the portal and make edits. And one of the ways that you would be alerted to the need for this is to look at this comparison of direct expenditure per student credit hour by CIP. So right now we're seeing the display of direct instructional expenditure per credit hour for 2017. And we can add a year, and in this case we have the previous year available. In some cases you might have not necessarily the previous year, but one prior to that, or even prior to that, since we've had data now in the portal from 2015 onward. So we're going to go ahead and click Update the chart, selecting 2016 as our comparison year. And now you get a view in which differences between programs become much more clear from one year to the next. So we see over here in this CIP that the cost per credit hour was quite a bit higher in 2016. Here it was higher in 2017. Here it was much higher in 2017. So those are situations in which we might say, gee, do I understand what happened in that year? And you can see what the cost per credit hour is by hovering over the bar in the chart, but you can also scroll down and you can see side by side the cost per student credit hour. So in communications, it went from 221 down to about 97, which is a pretty steep decline in cost per student credit hour. And in science, it went the other direction. So as I said, these would be music. We would be interested in what was the underlying reason for those changes. Then you can take a picture of this chart, share it with deans or other university or college level administrators, because it is a quick snapshot of what's happened at your institution from one year to the next. So we really think that this is a useful chart. Let's see if we can back up to some other things that may be of interest. Of course, in your current year, you can also look at national norms, so that if you wanted to, rather than look at a 3-year average, you could look at the norm tables, which show the more granular level information based on our classification systems, which include the Carnegie, the highest degree awarded, and the percent of undergrads. And perhaps more importantly, you can look at the row level data under the ratio tables. So if we select this option, we can go to one of the three norm types. Let's just try the highest degree, and let's just say we select for a baccalaureate program. And then you can select the CIP you're interested in. So maybe we'll look at computer and information sciences. And table 3F summarizes productivity. So if we submit that, we can take a look at productivity information for a department level view. And as I said, here's the row level data. An advantage here is these asterisks indicate outliers in the data. So apparently in programs that offer a bachelor's degrees as a highest degree, having a faculty size of 23 was an outlier. We can click on this arrow and we can order the data based on each of these columns that has an arrow. So now we can see we've got a small department, one or two faculty members, and that's why we can see that these two that have 21 and 23 were much larger. You can see the number of credit hours, undergraduate credit hours taught per faculty member. Again, there's an outlier. The number of outliers are displayed, and you can look at the number of class sections and so forth. So if you wanted more granular data to share with the department chair, you could then copy and paste this into an Excel file and share that so that they could look at some of the details. And of course, we make it clear that anyone that has access to this data must agree to conform with the terms of use, which is to use this for internal planning and assessment activities. So we think that these options are a much better way of validating your data and then also using it immediately to share information with department chairs. Now, in speaking of view only, the view only option is available under this users tab. So you'll notice there's a button for adding a view only user. In our example here, we have some individuals who are given access to some of the programs. For instance, Pat Kelly is able to see science, English, and physical therapy, but not the other 7 programs that were listed on the homepage. You can then copy a link to this view-only access and send that to a department chair. And what I'm going to do is to stop sharing this view and kind of jump into a PowerPoint that has a better summary of that. So let me do that. And let's see, probably this one will get me to the slides I want to the quickest. So I need to see if I can figure out how to get to my share. I think you probably want to see a different view of this. So let me switch one more time. And let's see if I can go down to where I need to be. Okay, so this is kind of where we were in the web portal, and here is a more user-friendly view of it. Log into your account, go to this tab, and then under Add New User Information, put in the required email and person's name. We've done a little bit of research on this, and right now we haven't had a large participation in using view only. I know that we use it here at Delaware and have found that we've gotten about 70% of our department chairs to look at the data and respond, which is very helpful, not only in just validating the data, but also increasing awareness of its utility. I think with the 3-year averages, it'll be much more in demand, so to speak. And I would say that although the 3-year averages in the web portal are helpful in validating the data on the IR side, they also provide an important context to what the use of the study is and how the results may be integrated into planning and evaluation. The other thing I would say is, although you can only see the 3-year averages for the particular discipline that you're looking at, if you should have a need for a larger number of CIPs and those 3-year averages, you can contact me and I will be happy to work out an arrangement with you to share what will be useful in facilitating your needs. We think that the value of the 3-year average is not only for the immediate benchmarking, but in particular, when you've got data over 3 years, you tend to smooth out some of the year-to-year variability. And if there is an influential observation due to some anomaly that was in a, say, discipline in which only a few participants provided data, we can tend to identify those more easily and make account for their influence. We do require that at least a sample size of 5 was available before we create a 3-year average. But we do have quite an array of those 3-year averages differentiated by institutional governance. With that, we are getting pretty near the end of the time that we've allotted for the 30-minute tea time webinar. We're going to be doing 4 more of these, and we hope that the usefulness of them will make it an incentive for you to tune in again. As I said earlier, we will record the webinars and share them. And I've also got these PowerPoints developed so we can put those into a PDF and share those as well. So you'll see my emails up there under webinars 2 and 3 content. And I want to make this information as accessible and useful as possible. On Valentine's Day, you'll see that we're going to discuss best practices for using the cost study data and the results. And we've kind of hit on that a little bit today in this first webinar, particularly in the sense of using the norms and ratio tables. And then on March 14th, we'll also look at the options that you have available to choose peer analyses and how you can navigate the peer analysis tool, which is new in the cost study web portal. We still will do things the old-fashioned way, so to speak, and provide Excel formatted tables for peer analyses, but the new tool allows you to select peers based on CIP, so that if you have different programs with different, say, highest degrees awarded, you'll have an option to pick a set of peers that correspond most closely to the actual situation in the departments that you're trying to provide data for. So we've reached the half-hour mark. I want to thank you all for being here, and I will open it up for questions if you've seen enough for now. Thank you again. Let's see, and maybe I have to. So I think everybody's unmuted, and if you'd like me to go back to a particular either view in the web portal or one of the PowerPoint slides, let me know, and we'll go in that direction. Everybody's being very polite. Or you're eating your lunch, perhaps.
No, it's really good.
Does anyone have a particular question that they'd like to have addressed? Okay, I've got somebody that has a chat. No questions, informative, okay. I did have a question about a need for extensions, and we are happy to work with you on extensions. Certainly an extension of 2 or 3 weeks past the end of January is not too hard for us to manage. So I would just ask you to go ahead and send me an email, and I'll be happy to record your request and sort of expected date. I see a question that says, are web classes included in organized class sections? The answer is any credit hours that that are taught and paid for by a department, we would want to include those in the cost study. Now, sometimes online classes do not get course section counts. And we understand that that's a practice that's somewhat widespread, and that's fine. On the other hand, if you have a count of class sections for online, you can include those as you normally would any other course. The difference, generally speaking, is there might be only one course listing for an online class, and it might have many more enrollments than a typical lecture class might. And so you're going to see that there's some degree of bias that introduces. We are working on trying to understand that in a more comprehensive fashion. We've begun to look at the online data from the last 3 years, and the first thing I would say about it is we know that there's some disciplines in which there are a much more significant portion of classes taught online. So you'll be hearing more from us in the future about that, what we find in our research. Any other particular questions? I think you can speak up, but so far I'm not hearing anybody. I don't know. I think I've unmuted everybody, but sometimes the muting is done on your end, which is very thoughtful and considerate of you to do that. But I don't want to inhibit anybody from asking a question if they're so inclined. One question that is very helpful is, can we input data in stages without a final submission? In other words, upload an Excel file and then look at that in the web portal, and then upload a subsequent Excel file to either modify or complete the data submission? And the answer is yes. If you upload, say, an initial, let's suppose you had 35 programs and you uploaded data for 25 of them, you would see the data, and in the other 10, you would simply see that there were zeros in most of the totals columns. And then you could take that additional data and upload it. And if it was just for the 10 programs and they were mapped to your CIPs, it would just populate those empty programs. If you wanted to overwrite the entire submission, you can do that as well. And should you have any problem with a data upload, let us know. We've in the past found that sometimes formatting in the Excel file can block the upload, and we're usually able to figure out what it is that needs to be done to correct that. Anyone else have other questions that they would like to either ask through audio or through the chat? The method of contacting us really is at your convenience. You can call me on the phone or email me directly. My phone is 302-831-2541. And of course, my email is tommyu@udel.edu. You can also contact us at ire-costs@udel.edu. The latter method of contacting our IRE cost mailbox may be optimal because I'm not always available to check my email. It seems like meetings are taking up a fair amount of time, and sometimes I'm away for a day or two at a time for travel and presentations and so forth. So you might have a more timely response if you went to IRE cost. If it was something about the web portal, for instance, that might be the best way to go. Any other questions come to mind? If not, I think we'll hope that most of you will be able to be available for the second webinar on February 14th. We will send out an email that will be more comprehensive than the one that you received for this webinar, and that it'll have a description of all 4 of the remaining webinars and their dates. I would make a note to say that on March 14th, by then we will be into daylight savings time, so I guess that's a good sign that spring will be on the way, and that the time change will be important to note so we don't end up being out of sync. But other than that, I'm looking forward to working with you, and if you have any questions, let me know. When it comes to the recording of this webinar, what we'll do is take a look at the first 30 minutes and then probably edit out this portion for availability. But if you would like the full unedited version, I think we can make that available too. We'll try to put it in a link so you won't have to worry about a file download, but I haven't accomplished that with our past webinars, so I'll make that a tentative situation until I can make sure that we can actually deliver. But it's a good thought, because it does seem like it's more efficient if you can simply go to a web link. I think we actually did one in YouTube, so it may be a YouTube video that we'll go with. Any other thoughts come to mind? Well, again, thank you all for taking the time to be here with us today, and I'll wish you a calm and peaceful rest of January, which may be asking too much given all the deadlines that I think are pending, but in any case, we can always hope for that. Thanks again. Bye now.